So with this, thanks everyone for your attention, and I'll hand that over to Ajahn Brahmali.
Okay, everyone, so business out of the way. Now let's get on to the real business, which is meditation practice. So sit down comfortably, close your eyes, and let's get started here. Okay, so as always, make sure you take a lot of time in the beginning, just to relax, just to enjoy. One of the skillful means sometimes is not to think about the meditation as meditation, to think of it more like relaxation time, enjoyment time. Sometimes the concepts and ideas that we use to label things also make them, give them a certain reality. So by thinking of it as something pleasant, we're also making the meditation more pleasant. It take a lot of time in the beginning just to relax and find the ease, and then mindfulness tends to arise all by itself as a consequence. It is often so nice at the end of a long day just to sit down and relax and just enjoy the peace. And as you close your eyes, it's as if you are shutting down the world to a large extent and moving inside of yourself and allowing yourself to find that refuge within, allowing the world to be, enjoying the peace of the moment. And what a wonderful thing it is, just that very simple act of relaxing, of being at ease and going within her. And to know how your meditation is going, sometimes all you have to do is to feel your body. And if there is any tension or discomfort in the body, then you know that the mind also is not fully relaxed. So come back to the body. Have that sense of care and compassion for yourself. And as you have that, and you also have the patience, just waiting in the here and now, things tend to resolve themselves all by themselves. Nothing much you have to do except being patient and caring, and as you do so, things tend to progress on their own. And try, if you can, to feel that beautiful atmosphere. The atmosphere of so many people sitting quietly together. There's something very powerful about that. And allow yourself to be drawn into that stillness. Allow yourself to use the energy of the group around you. What a wonderful thing it is to be able to be part of a group such as this. So many good spiritual friends practicing in the right way, doing what is good. What a wonderful thing it is that we have such a Buddhist society such as this. And see if you can bring up a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for these marvelous blessings in life. Blessings without which our life would be so much poorer. And now towards the end, turn your attention to all the people who are here today, and also all the members of the Buddhist Society. And just remember, whatever differences we may have, the qualities we have in common, the spiritual kindness, the good intentions of all these people are far more important than any differences we may have. Everyone here is worthy of respect. Everyone here is well-intentioned. Everyone here is worthy of our goodwill. May you all be happy. May you all be well. now just to come back to your breath for a few moments. And now ask yourself how you feel. And if you do feel more relaxed and more at ease, ask yourself why that is the case. Try to review your meditation a little bit before we come to the very end.